Hey there, everybody, including Ian Dark. Welcome into this edition of ESPN FC's Extra Time. We got your questions off social media. We got Stevie and Shaka here in studio. And I got a flight to catch, so... Efficiency first.
All right.
So we're in your way.
What?
We're in your way, are we?
You've never once been in my way. Ian! All right, on that
By the way, we've got to tell him. We all laugh politely, Ian, because nobody heard the word we said.
Yeah,
Mike, everyone blocked out. We all felt... Well, yeah.
You can't pull the curtain back like that. And here we were going to submit this one for the Emmy. All right, question from Anda. Santiago Jimenez played against his former teammates at Feyenoord after just being part of the club only a couple weeks ago. This was in the Champions League. He started for Milan. Have you ever played a match against a former club that quickly, or I guess ever, after moving to a new club?
No.
I'll go to you first because you moved clubs more than Stevie. Did you have some instances where you did go back, and was it awkward?
Oh, yeah.
You could tell it was awkward for Jimenez. He seemed to be a little bit out of it by the time he was on the field.
You go back all the time. I mean, but never that quick. Well, all my moves were in the summer.
Right.
So I always had a pre-season.
What was the quickest you went back? Couple months?
2 or 3 months.
Okay.
So point being, I've always moved in the summer, so I've always been with my new club through pre-season, into the start of the season, and then, you know, when it fell in the calendar, I can't remember. But so it was always, let's say, at least 2 or 3 months.
Natum's interior decorator has our next question for all of you. Are you going to miss the old Goodison Park? I feel like Ian is our resident historian. What do you miss most about Goodison Park?
I just think it's a proper football club and a proper football ground. Great fans, great atmosphere. I mean, it is starting to fall apart a bit. And Stevie mentioned on the big show tonight about the little tunnel there, which I think now is just about unique in the Premier League level anyway, where the players, you know, are almost on top of each other as they're kind of queuing up to come out for the game. And yeah, it is a recipe maybe for trouble after matches as well. But there's a special feel about the place, and yeah, it will be missed.
You and I have been talking about it a little, Stevie. One of the classic features is it's so embedded in the community.
Yeah.
And that's such a feature of the old school grounds. That's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and unfortunately, that's completely disappearing. I'm glad to say that Anfield looks as though it's going to be staying for a long, long time now. They've spent, what, 100 million? Hundreds of millions? So that tells you that they're not going anywhere soon. And so that's fantastic. But to lose Goodison is really worse for anybody connected with Everton, to be honest. Because for a player or a coach going there, you knew you were in for a tough day. That's the only thing you knew. Whether it was the crowd, whether it was the tightness of the field, the stadium, the whole thing, you knew you were in for a tough day. And Evertonians are going to lose that. Now they're going to the brand new stadium, all big and airy and lovely to play on and the whole thing. So, yes, there'll be derbies and yes, there'll be a lot more aggression, but you're going to lose that atmosphere and you're going to lose that advantage. Everyone are going to lose the advantage they had at Goodison over every other club. That's going to disappear. That's going to be the biggest problem next season when they move in.
You agree with that, Shaka?
I think the atmosphere is going to be lost.
You can't move. That can't move.
You can't. So even without moving stadium, so I'll use Upton Park, West Ham as an example. They redeveloped Upton Park and put a 10-yard buffer between the side of the pitch and the new stand. And honestly, the difference it made from having that stand 3 or 4 yards away from the side of the pitch to moving it now 10 or 15, just in terms of the atmosphere, I can't begin to explain. The other sad thing, though, is moving grounds out of the city is kind of where the game is going. And at the very least, for a safety point of view, just in terms of players coming in and out, whether it's the team buses, and how difficult it is to ensure their safety when that stadium is right within the city. It's really difficult. So I as much as I remember the old school and...
Can I be honest? I don't think it has anything to do with safety. I think they want bigger stadiums, and it's cheaper to get land outside of cities. So
absolutely.
They're not doing it to keep you safe on the bus ride to the stadium.
But I just looking at it because again, Upton Park was right in East London, and trying to leave Upton Park.
So are you just getting like a quagmire getting out of the stadium?
Yeah,
And you got all the fans on top of you?
and not only do you have all the fans on top of you, you have all the fans spilling out of pubs on top of you, which poses its own risk. Now, again, just from a never mind the atmosphere and whatnot, just from a safety perspective, I totally understand it. But to Stevie's point, you lose an awful lot. While I could talk about Upton Park moving 10 or 15 yards back, West Ham then move to the City of London Stadium, or whatever it's called, and it is totally different. Everything about it just feels different, and you'll never get that back.
If I told you that pretty much from the throw-in line at Upton Park, between me and you is
That's
where the
fan.
fans were.
Right.
And the first time I ever played at Upton Park, I was trying to go for a long throw. So I went back towards the wall. As I'm leaning on the wall, all these hands grabbed me and wouldn't let me go. So I was like, they were just holding on to me.
Rock star Steve Nicol, huh?
And, of course, and the thing is, at the time, everybody thought it was hilarious, including the players on the field, the referee, the coppers, everybody. I mean, if you do that now, it's like,
ban them from the ground for life. Yeah.
But no, they wouldn't let me go.
Stevie, who were some defenders, past or present, you would have loved to have as teammates?
How far back can I go?
As far back as you want.
I mean, Maldini.
Yeah.
There's
Here. Let's do it this way. Give me your.
I'll give you one. Syria that people won't know. Go on YouTube and look up Syria from Juventus, from the 70s. This guy was a classic sweeper. He was Baresi before Baresi. But I could write you a huge list of defenders.
A man who appreciates the craft. Ian, what about you? Give me some of your favorite defenders over the years.
Well, I'm going to think of a couple of fullbacks, Cafu and Roberto Carlos, the great. So there's a couple, and of course Franco Baresi, another Italian, fantastic player at Milan.
Of course, our very own Frank Leboeuf, probably somewhere in that conversation as well. No doubt about that. For Ian, which team would win in your opinion? 80s Liverpool, 90s United, early aughts Chelsea, or City from the Pep era?
Oh my goodness me! I mean, you're very difficult to compare eras. Sorry, my voice is going. Take it away, Stevie. You answer it.
Well, I'll tell you what the thing is. I don't know if you remember. So years ago, you had rugby union and rugby league, and everybody used to say who would win a game between the rugby union and the rugby league.
But it depends whose rules you're using.
Well, exactly. It depends the situation and the rules you're using. Liverpool in the 80s, like all the other great teams in Europe in the 80s, in my opinion, if you put the conditions in, none of these teams would beat those teams in the 80s. If we played in the same condition, same balls, same type of fields, the whole thing, they wouldn't.
Right.
And the biggest problem I have is, are you telling me that those great teams in the 80s, with more space, more time on the ball, better equipment, wouldn't be even better than they were? That's the problem in answering this question. Because all of these teams are great teams. But that's the problem.
It's hard to pick apart Stevie's logic. That makes sense to me.
That's a sentence that's never been uttered before.
There's always a first time.
Ian, have you found your voice? Can you make a choice between those 4 dynasties?
I can't really, but if pressed, I'd say Pep Guardiola's Man City. But Stevie's point's a good one. The old players could have played in the modern game. Of course they could. And, you know, the pitches are so much better now, aren't they, to play on? It's a very, very different game, and it's a faster game. But don't tell me that somebody like, if you want to go further back, George Best and Tom Finney and, you know, Stevie himself, of course they could have played and been stars in the modern game as well. Had they grown up with the conditions, the nutrition, the dieting, and all that kind of thing, and the fitness regimes of this era.
Oh, that nutrition. Last question from Felix. Was recently introduced to the Wimbledon FC Crazy Gang. Does the panel have any interesting interactions with the Wimbledon Crazy Gang? Stevie?
You played a final against the Crazy Gang.
Yeah.
For somebody who wasn't around at that time, where did the crazy
listen.
gang nickname come from? Just because they were tough and hard and kicked you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're an acquired taste. You know, at the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do to win a game of football. But, I mean...
Have they been the team that achieved the most, being the most vicious? Does that make sense? Like, they won a trophy, and their legacy is kind of...
Here's the thing. Here's the thing people forget. All of these things, the people that get the most benefit from it are them themselves. This whole crazy gang thing is about getting them together and making them one. It's not about scaring the... Nobody was scared of them. Nobody was scared of them. You know, Vinny's a great example. Vinny's probably one of the best teammates you would ever have in your team.
But the opponents are not seeing him as a teammate. They weren't scared of him?
No. No, you're not scared. You know he's going to come and try and rattle you around your knees. And so, if you're a good football player and you're a smart football player, you don't put yourself in that situation. You use your football intelligence. Because Wimbledon weren't the only team that would try to kick you. So, all of this crazy gang stuff, all the things they did was to mould them into one unit.
Did they have any football to them? I'll be honest, I didn't watch that team.
Well, that's the one thing that...
The reputation suggests they didn't, I guess.
Well, yeah, but they were... we lost to them 1-0 in the cup final, right? And the reason we lost to them is because, or one of the reasons, was because they were well organised, they had a great shape, every single one of them would die for each other. And then when they got the opportunity, they took advantage of it. And at the time, they were actually 6th in the first division.
Right.
So today, they'd be pushing for a Champions League spot. So there were no mugs. They weren't bad footballers who, because they were a little bit not right in the head, made them a great football team or a bad football team. But all this crazy gang stuff, it's moulded for them, not anybody else.
To your point, Stevie, Seb, I thought that a lot of those players were really good footballers, but almost by leaning into the stereotype, kind of did themselves a disservice. Vinnie Jones was an incredible footballer. Robbie Earle, incredible footballer. Dennis Wise went on to Chelsea. Really good footballers. But then, and I felt I saw this especially with Vinnie Jones, would lean into this reputation of being a hard man, about being the crazy gang, that would make him just make bad decisions on the field and get yellow carded and sent off. That would cost his team. When, again, I felt just from a purely footballing perspective, he was a lot better than that. And you could say that about any number. McCarthy, you go through the list, they were far better than their reputation, I think, suggests.
Ian, any good Wimbledon stories?
Well, I think they went from non-league to the first division in 9 years. And mentioned in '88 final that Stevie did. Look at the first 5 minutes. The tackled Vinnie Jones goes in on Steve McMahon. Today, that would have been about 3 red cards in 1 instance.
All 3 that we saw after Liverpool-Everton for 1 play. All right, that'll do it for this edition of Extra Time here in the ESPN FC studios. Thanks to Ian, thanks to Shaka, thanks to Stevie, and thanks to you guys for sending in your questions. Don't miss tomorrow's edition of the show.